Hello. Okay, in this tutorial, I would like to show you how I create a grid layout for your, as an example for your process book, because creating a layout is very important. I'll give you a clear visual references that you can place your images and your text that align with each other and in a kind of visually pleasing in a visually pleasing way that it like proportionally divided into equal units. So it's a very important things to set up and will make your like creating your layout much easier in the later process. Okay, so I will show you some instruction to let you know how you can create columns, and those are the columns, the vertical one, and the horizontal one, those are the rows with the blue guidelines here, and also like thin gray baseline. So those will be all like very helpful references for you when you're making your layout. Okay, so we'll get started with creating a new document. Okay, so we'll change the unit to inches. So the requirement for the process book is 8.5 inch by 11. And you can have as many pages as you want. I will start with 15 and we can add that later very easily just in the document itself. And we'll make sure facing pages are checked. So your layout will look like spreads. And the page will start at number 1, and you can have as many columns as you want over here. And the column scatter on this weird numbers actually is equal to 12 point. Okay, and we'll leave it as it is, and the margin interval is ½ inch. Okay, so we will create our page. Okay, so first of all, you can change your margins and columns even after you create your setting. Just go to Layout, Margin and Columns. These are exactly the same setting that we found earlier in when we create a new document. So I want to share with you really quickly how many columns you should add in your document. So definitely try to use a number that can be divided into like 3s or 4s. Definitely you don't want to do numbers like 7 or like 5 or 3 because it give you like very little option to divide them. Okay, so I'll show you an example. Like 12 will be a great number because 12 you can like equally, it's multiplied by 3 and 4, and 12 it's ideal because it's a multiple of 3 and 4 at the same time. So with 12 columns, you can very easily divide them like 3 by 4 or 2 by 6, 4 by 3. So 4 by 3 means there's like 4 kind of columns, and each columns has 3 smaller columns inside. Okay, and then 6 by 2. And of course, you can divide them in different columns. So 2, this one is 2, this one has like 6, this one has 2 and 2. So 12 is a kind of a flexible number. You can kind of divide them in a lot of different ways. Okay, so here I think 12 seems a little too much. Our page will look like very crowded. So I will do 8. Okay, so I think 8 is a good number. I can divide them in like 2s very easily. Okay, so here we have our column set up. Okay, next let's set up our baseline. So we will go to View, Grids and Guides, and check Show Baseline Grids. Okay, so when we check that, nothing happened. The reason why it's not showing is because we were zooming further. So in default, we won't see the baseline until we zoom in into 75%. Okay, the shortcut I'm using is Command Plus to zoom in. Okay, so let's fix that. So in Design Preferences, let's find Grid. So actually, one thing we need to do before we go is I'm actually now changing my columns on my first page. So I want to set up all my setting in the master page. So okay, so make sure when you're at like modifying your columns, do it in the master page. So yeah, I actually forgot that earlier when I recorded this tutorial. So I'll show you if I'm modifying the columns here. I change it to 6 when I'm in page 1. You can see the other pages, they are still in the first setting when I create the document, which is 8. Okay, so if you want everything to be the same number, make sure you double click on your master page. So now we're entering our master page and create your grids and guidelines here. Okay, so I'll do it again and make sure it's 8. And then now we can go back to set up our baseline. Okay, so go to Preferences, Grids. And then I would like to do some modification over here. So I will change it to the view threshold to 50%. And then I'll choose a light gray. The color is a little more easy to see since there will be a lot of lines. And instead of starting from 0, I make it start from 0, but I will make it relevant to the top margin instead of top page. Okay, and then the increment of every 12 point, I actually will keep it as 12 as default because our gutter is 12. And I think, yeah, just make the baseline also 12 will work. So of course you can change the increment of your baseline. It depends on the font you're choosing. Depends on different font you want. You probably want to have different leading for your paragraph. So I strongly encourage you to go here and watch this tutorial if you haven't. This guy give a very clear explanation of what I'm trying to explain here. And he also used 11 points and 13 points in his tutorial as an example. So you can see him using like those numbers as a different example, so you can see how the math work. Okay, so you probably don't know what I meant about math, but it will be obvious later. Okay, but we'll use 12. 12 actually is a very easy number to work with in this size of the document. Okay, so now we have the baseline, and we can see it even in 50%. Okay, and what we want to do next is adding some rows for our grids here. Okay, so these are columns and rows are the horizontal lines. So we go to Layout, Create Guides. Okay, and here are the rows. We'll leave the column 0 since we already have columns here, but rows is something we need to add. So we would like to create a like a rows that actually align with our baseline, but it's a little difficult right now. You can see they are not aligned no matter what number I choose. Okay, so this is kind of the hardest part for this tutorial is finding a correct number or how to change the setup of the page to make our rows of the guides fit with our baseline. Okay, so let's cancel it. Okay, so in order to know what will be the number that we can divide our guides is to first of all know how many like units of the baseline that we have, so we can divide them into a number. Okay, so the suggestion to how to calculate how many like baseline unit we have. So you can create like a shape 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you can just copy this shape, so that way you can know you can like we're counting like in 10. So you can see 12 is actually works very well because we have perfectly 60 like unit of baseline here. So how can what can be divided to divide as 60? So 60 have a lot of different numbers could be divided perfectly. We can divide it in with 10. So there will be 10 rows, and each rows will have 6 baseline unit. Or we can also divide it into 12, and then there will be 12 rows, and then each of them will have like 5 baseline unit. Okay, so that's it. So we get the number, then let's try. Okay, okay, so 10 didn't work, and 12 didn't work either. Why? Okay, the reason why even we have the perfect number, it's still not divided perfectly because it's the last unit you can see here. It's one line instead of another columns. Okay, another gutter. So it actually is divided in like 61 unit instead of 60. Okay, so how can we fix that? So we just need to make our like kind of raise our margin a little bit to kind of remove one of the baseline that we have here. Of course, you can make your top margin a little bit lower too. I'll do baseline because we will add page number down here. So it's nice to have a little more space. Okay, so the bottom is 5" with the margin here. So we want to raise it another unit of the baseline. Okay, so we have each baseline is 12 point. Okay, so we will just do 1/2 inch plus 12 point. And InDesign will actually convert that for us. So we hit OK. So you can see now the bottom margin is raised a little bit. Okay, so this part is not changed yet, so we need to change on the right page too. Okay, so margin and columns will raise the bottom plus 12 point. Okay, so now the two side is even. And now we can select both page. Yeah, we should just select the both page in the beginning. And now we can add the columns. And you can see at 10, they align perfectly right now with our baseline. Okay, well, we'll do 10, and I think 10 will work. So now we have our layout finally successfully placed on our document. And yay, it's all on all the pages. So we don't have to do them one by one. And since we have the layout of the margin on the master page, no matter how many pages that I added, it will apply to the same setting that we have in the master page. Okay, one last thing I want to show you is how baseline work. Of course, when you're seeing those grids and rows, you can create them and use them to align with different columns very easily. And then I can place text. So I can have, for example, 3 columns of text, and I'll place some type really quickly fill with placeholder text. Okay, and then I will create another one. Type, create, fill with placeholder text. Okay, so yeah, now the layout with a gutter with both rows and columns is very helpful for us to align things. But how about baseline? Is it really working? As you can see, it's not. Okay, so the text is not really snap on our baseline currently. So there's one more things you need to do to make it work. So you have to select your paragraph and go to the paragraph panel. Okay, and then here, align baseline grid. Okay, so now this paragraph here will always snap to our baseline. Okay, so but the problem is the leading looks awful. It's too much leading. So we'll just have to select our text and then kind of change it to 12 as the one that we actually set up for our baseline, and now you can see it looks much better. Okay, so same thing, I don't really like the hyphenated, so I always will remove that. Okay, so same here, I will select all the paragraph here and then snap it to the baseline and then change the leading to 12. Okay, so now you can see no matter where you place your paragraph, it will always snap to the baseline. So even without the grid, you can see your paragraph, there's always a line with each other and on the same baseline, which is a pretty cool thing. Okay, yeah, so that's it. I think hopefully the tutorial here give you a good explanation how you can set up a night grids so you can place your images in different unit, and they will be and they will do the alignment for you, at least on the baseline for the paragraph. Okay, so next I will show you some tips to set up paragraph styles, so you don't have to create a paragraph and then you have to go here and click on this every time you do it. Okay, so that will be explained later in the next tutorial.